In the last few lectures, we have seen context-free grammars and context-free languages. And the agenda for today is to discuss about a normal form for context-free grammars which has got many applications. And the name of the normal form is Chomsky normal form. So when a context-free grammar is said to be in Chomsky normal form or in CNF, a context-free grammar G with V as the set of variables or non-terminals, T as the set of terminal symbols, capital S is a variable or non-terminal, namely the start symbol of the grammar, and capital P the set of rules or productions is said to be in CNF if each production in P is of the form capital A goes to capital BC or capital A going to small a. That means where capital A, B, C are variables or non-terminals and small a is a terminal symbol. That means a context-free grammar is said to be in CNF if the RHS of each production in it is either two variables or a single terminal symbol. Not that variables or non-terminals are same. It's called a variable or a non-terminal, both the same, variable or non-terminal. So the RHS is a string of two variables or is a single terminal symbol. Then the grammar is said to be in CNF. So a context-free grammar to be in CNF, every production must satisfy this requirement. The RHS must be two variables or a single terminal symbol. So it looks like a very restricted type of context-free grammar, but it is not so. Why is it that it is said to be a normal form? Because every context-free grammar G is either in CNF or otherwise we can automatically convert G into a grammar in CNF by preserving the language represented by G. If you are given with a grammar G which is not in CNF, then you can automatically convert G into a grammar G prime in CNF such that G prime represents the same language as that of G except for the null string, because null string cannot be generated by a grammar in CNF because the production's structure is not allowing you to do that, because the RHS must be a single terminal symbol or two variables. So it never allow you to derive epsilon, because for that the RHS must be epsilon for a production and you have to go to that variable from the start symbol without deriving any other. If the start symbol is having a production going to epsilon, then you can derive the null string, otherwise you cannot. So null string cannot be represented by a CNF grammar, and that is the only difference. Otherwise you can get a CNF grammar generating the same language. So I will say preserving the semantics or the language represented modulo this small difference. I hope the structure of a grammar in CNF is clear to you, and this is a non-trivial statement claiming that an arbitrary context-free grammar can be converted into an equivalent grammar in CNF. It is a non-trivial statement because this structure is looking like a very restricted kind of context-free grammar, but we are claiming that it's not so. And that is the agenda for today's lecture. We are going to discuss an algorithm which will take a context-free grammar arbitrary context-free grammar as input and gives you a context-free grammar in CNF as output, said that the output grammar will generate the same language as that of the input grammar except for the null string. Let us try to understand it in more depth using an example. So here is a context-free grammar given, and the question is it in CNF? Three productions are there. To be in CNF, each production must satisfy either this structure or this structure. And you can see that the answer is no, because production number 1 and 3, if you look at, is violating the requirement. Here a string of 2 terminals and 1 non-terminal not allowed. Here again it's epsilon not allowed in CNF. So it's not in CNF. Here is another grammar given, and can you see whether it is in CNF or not? To see whether a grammar is in CNF, it's just enough to look at each production and see whether each production is in CNF or not. Here you can see that the first 4 productions, the RHS is a string of 2 variables in the first 4 productions. So each one satisfies the requirement, that is the first one. And the last 2 productions are in this form. The RHS is a terminal simple. So the grammar is in CNF because each of its productions is in CNF. And in this case, it's not difficult to verify that the language of G prime is language of G except for epsilon. Look at it offline and see that it's true. And now we need to discuss the algorithm for obtaining a grammar like this from a given grammar like this. And before we do that, let us see why we need Chomsky normal form. There are some nice applications for Chomsky normal form. First of all, it provides us a way to solve the membership problem for context-free languages. So what is a membership problem? Given a context-free language L and a string X, we need to decide whether the given string X is a member of the context-free language or not. And we know only one formal representation for context-free languages as on today, and which is context-free grammar. So given a context-free grammar means given a context-free language. So membership problem, and you know that problem is decidable. Here the answer is either yes or no. Yes means X is an element of the language. No means X is not an element of the context-free language. This is a decision problem now, and a decision problem is said to be decidable, if you recall the definition, when there exists an algorithm to find the solution of the problem. And here the CNF is giving us a solution or algorithm because CNF is a normal form, and hence you can assume that a context-free grammar given for the language is in CNF. Yeah, and if it is in CNF, then the length of the derivation of the string X can be bounded by 2 into length of X. There is a maximum number of steps that you need to have in the derivation process can be bounded by 2 into length of X. Maybe you can think offline, why is it so? It's easy to see that. Anyway, it is possible to bound it, and if there are only bounded number of steps, then using an algorithm you can try all the different steps because it's finitely many. So you are getting a naive algorithm for the membership problem. You see whether you can derive it or not. Because the number of steps in the derivation is bounded, you have to try only for finitely many derivation sequences and you can solve the membership problem. So that is the first application. Another one, which is a generic one, is enabling you to get easier proofs about context-free languages or context-free grammars. If you have Chomsky normal form, without loss of generality, you can assume that any context-free grammar is in CNF. Then it allows you to get easy proof. For example, later we will be discussing pumping lemma for context-free languages. Just like in regular languages, here again, pumping lemma can be used to prove that certain languages are non-context free. We will be exploiting the structure of CNF to get a proof for the pumping lemma statement. That is another application. There are so many similar other applications. To motivate you to learn Chomsky normal form, just mentioning few applications of it. And now this is the time for us to formulate an algorithm to convert a context-free grammar into CNF. We can try to do it by using a generic example. So here is a context-free grammar given, and you can easily observe that this is not in CNF because the first, third and fourth productions violate the property. Why is it that number 3 production is violating property? Because the RHS is a single variable. Single variable is not allowed. You need 2 variables like this. And this kind of a production where the RHS and LHS are single variables, like capital S going to capital A, is what is called a unit production. And unit productions are not allowed in CNF. Now the question is, how can we manage the unit production? How can you get rid of unit productions? Can you just throw it away? Can you just throw the production tree? No, you cannot do it in general. Suppose capital A can derive some strings other than epsilon, then you will be in trouble. If you just throw it away, assume that there is another production, number 5, which is capital A going to small a, then you can derive small a, and so throwing it away is not a possible solution because then you are not preserving the language. Maybe you can ask this question, what we can do with these 2 productions, 3 and 4? You can see that you can derive the null string. How will you do it? From the start simple, you apply production number 3, you will get capital A. And from there, you apply production number 4, you will get epsilon. So epsilon is derived. Now suppose that this production was like capital A is going to small a, then small a can be derived. So you cannot just throw away production number 3, that's not allowed. But now you can see what you can do. If you have a production like capital S going to A and then capital A going to epsilon, what you can derive is epsilon, which can be managed by another production saying that capital S going to epsilon. So this is the transitive clause of this production. So you can say that this can be done by replacing these 2 productions, the unit production and this production, with a single production S going to epsilon. Because you know that S can derive A and A can derive epsilon. So in 2 steps from S you can derive epsilon. That can be managed by adding this production. And this step can be generalized. What you can do is, suppose you have 2 productions. Capital A is going to capital B and capital B is going to alpha, where alpha is an arbitrary string. Then you can say that, okay, I can just throw away these 2 and replace these 2 with a single production capital A going to alpha. Because alpha is the only thing that I can derive through the variable B. So I can just throw away this production and I can say A is directly going to alpha. So this is what I can do. And recall that suppose for B there are 2 productions. Say one is B going to alpha, another one is B going to beta. then you have to add A going to alpha and also A going to beta. So for each production of the form B going to alpha, you have to add A is going to alpha. It's not difficult to see, and hope you followed. Otherwise, think about it and try to understand what we are doing. And this step is what is called elimination of unit production. How will you eliminate unit production? If you have a production A going to capital A going to capital B, and then for each production capital B going to alpha, you add A going to alpha. And that's enough. You can easily observe that you are preserving the language represented. Now we are moving on to the next step, and here the question is, this is not allowed, then how will you manage this? S going to epsilon. Can I just throw it away now, the production number 3 in this grammar? No, I cannot. The problem is, if I throw away this, I cannot derive left and right parentheses alone. If epsilon, this transition is there, what I can do is, by applying production number 1, I will derive this string, and then by applying production number 3, I will derive left parenthesis followed by right parenthesis, which is not allowed if I just throw away the production number 3. So that's the problem. So how can we manage this kind of a production? We don't want to retain it. What else we can do? That's a question. And to answer, maybe you ask another question. How does the epsilon production help us in deriving a sentence? That is easy to answer. In a derivation, the production for the epsilon production for S can be used to take out S from the current sentential form, because if you apply this production, S will go out. So that is what you can do. And if that is the case, then it is easy. What you can do is, you can say that this can be done by S goes to epsilon can be replaced with the productions S going to left right, S going to S, and S going to S, which are obtained by substituting epsilon for S in production number 1 and 2. You just substitute epsilon for S in all the productions. Then you will get one production each for each substitution, and that's enough. And here, if you substitute epsilon for S, you will get left right. So that is what I added, S going to left right after substituting epsilon for S. And if you apply that trick here, if you substitute epsilon for the first S, you will get capital S going to this right side S, and that is what I added here. And if you substitute epsilon for the second S, you will get capital S going to the first S, and that is why I am getting these two productions which are same. But mechanically, if you do, you will get these two. As a human being, maybe you add only one. That's okay. So mechanically, if you do it, you are getting this. So what I did is, if you have S going to epsilon, in all the productions, you substitute epsilon for S in the RHS, and you will get a production for each such S. So how many occurrences are there for S here? One here, second one here, third one here. So you are getting 3 productions. And that's what you are doing. And this again is generalizable procedure. So what you can say is, for all productions of the form, capital A is going to alpha, B, beta, add the production alpha going to, capital A going to alpha, beta, when you have B is going to epsilon. Okay, if you have the epsilon production for B, and wherever you have B, you add a production by substituting epsilon for B. In this case, what you will get? When you substitute epsilon for B, you are getting alpha, beta. That's what we did. And this again is not a very difficult to do procedure, and this is what is called elimination of epsilon production. So now using examples, we have seen how can you get rid of a unit production like this, and how can you get rid of epsilon production. And not that when you are eliminating epsilon production, you may be introducing unit productions like this, that you need to eliminate again by applying the rule for eliminating unit production. Okay, now the only remaining things are, and not that here, I replaced S goes to epsilon with these two productions. Okay, these two are same, so I need to add only one of the two same productions. Now it remains us to manage these two productions, number 1 and number 3. So how can you manage this? And we can manage the first production like this. First, what you do is, the problem is you have both non-terminal and terminal simples in the production. So what you do is, you replace the non-terminal simples with the non-terminal. So what I did is, I have given a variable here to represent left parenthesis, capital L, and then I said L is nothing but left parenthesis. I just added a permissible production in CNF. So if I say L is going to left parenthesis, then the left parenthesis can be replaced with L. This is exactly what I did. The similar trick can be applied for the right parenthesis. So I said L, capital LSR, where L is nothing but left parenthesis and R is nothing but right parenthesis. And then what you do for this particular production, you can say capital S going to LR, because you have these two productions, that's enough. And the step can be generalized. What you can do is, ensure that for every production of the form capital X going to alpha, where length of alpha is greater than 1, that is, the length of the RHS is more than is greater than 1, then what you do is, you observe that then the RHS is full of variables. If it is not full of variables, you do this trick. What you do, you give a variable name for representing a terminal simple and then add a corresponding production in the ground. That's what you do. So this is exactly what you do. This can be done by replacing productions of the form capital X going to alpha 1 small a alpha 2 with the productions capital X going to, you substitute capital A as the variable for small a. This is exactly what I did. And then you say capital A is going to be small a. And to understand it, maybe we consider a simple example. Suppose you have this production, capital X going to this string. And what is the problem? If you want this as the requirement, that is, the RHS can be of any length, but all simples must be variables. And here is the only simple which violates. And our convention is that small letters are representing terminal simples. So what you do is, you say this small e is represented by capital E and capital E is nothing but small e. These two productions can replace this single production. This can be replaced with these two productions, and that you do for every such occurrence of a terminal simple in this kind of a production. So that is again very easy to do, and this is what you do. So we have not completely managed it, but we did this. Now the RHS is full of variables, and it remains us to now break it into two productions satisfying the requirement of a CNF grammar, and that's what we do in this step. Now if you look at this step of the conversion, production number 2, 3, 4 and 5 are okay. The only problematic production is number 1. And what you do is, you replace this capital SR with another variable, say X. You can say say SR is nothing but capital X, and then you say X is nothing but SR. So you are adding a new production for X. X is going to capital SR. This is permitted in CNF, and now you can replace this capital SR with capital X. And that is what you do for this particular case, and this can be generalized. What you do? Now replace each production of the form capital Y going to be followed by beta such that the length of beta is more than 1. That means it is not in the CNF form. And without loss of generality, you can assume that in beta there is no terminal symbol. If there are, then the previous step can be applied to get rid of that. So you assume that beta is full of variables, but now the length is more than 1. So what you do? What you do is you replace all the simples except the first one with the capital X, and you say that Y is going to be followed by capital X, and then you add the production X going to whatever is here as such beta. Now you note that the length of beta is reduced, the length of RHS, if it is n here, now here it is n minus 1. You apply the same trick, you will get n minus 2 length. Gradually you will get into length 2 production in the RHS. A sequence of length 2 productions. That is what you do, and that again is not very difficult, and that will be clear only when you apply the algorithm in an example. So this was the original grammar given, and we applied all the discussed steps to get rid of all these productions, and we obtained a grammar in CNF with a set of 6 productions. Hope you understood what I said, and now we can formally write the algorithm, and here is the procedure. First one is remove unit productions or epsilon productions, the first 2 steps that we discussed. Maybe in the next slide we can see how can you do the step 1 formally. So first you get rid of the unit productions and epsilon productions, and after that what you do is ensure that for each production of the form X going to alpha, where length of alpha is greater than 1, and you ensure that then alpha is full of variables, and that is what we discussed in the previous slide. Otherwise what you do is this trick. Okay, this is exactly what we did in the previous slide, and not in the previous slide, last but one slide. And number 3, once you do this, then the RHS can be a string of length 2 where 2 symbols are variables, or a string of length more than 2. In that case you break it like this. That is what we discussed in the previous slide. So you break it. Suppose you have B beta where beta is of length greater than 1. What you do is replace beta with X, and you say that Y is going to Bx is the production, and then you say X is going to beta, and either beta is of length 2 or more than 2. If it is more than 2, apply the same trick and continue until you derive a string of length 2. And this is the procedure. Hope you followed it, and it will be clear only if you apply this on examples. And now we can formalize the first step, and then try to do an example. Given a context-free grammar, how will you get rid of unit and epsilon productions? What you do is, if you have unit epsilon production like this, what you do? You substitute epsilon for B, then you will get A goes to alpha beta, and that is exactly what you do. For each production of the form A going to alpha B beta, you add alpha going to A going to alpha beta. For each of the production where B is occurring in the RHS, you have to apply this trick, that is replace B with epsilon, and whatever is the resulting production you add it to B. That is what you do. And how will you get rid of unit production? If you have A going to B and B going to gamma, for all productions of the form B going to gamma, you add A going to gamma. That's exactly what we discussed. So now what you did in step 1 is repeatedly add this. This is very important. You repeatedly add these productions as long as you can add new productions. So you are not taking out any production, you are just adding it. Okay, then finally what you do is, suppose G prime is the grammar that you obtained by adding these productions into G. Then finally you remove all the epsilon and unit productions and return the grammar. That's it. In this step we are adding some more productions to replace all the epsilon and unit productions. And once you finish adding all these productions, then you throw away all the unit and epsilon productions and return the grammar, and that's it. And with this we are moving on to the last slide, where I am giving you an assignment. You apply the procedure learned to convert this grammar into CNF. So today we have seen a procedure to convert an arbitrary context-free grammar into Chomsky normal form, and we saw that there are some nice applications for context-free grammar in CNF. Thank you.